Reaction of metals with water. So metals, they react with water. The metals will displace this hydrogen and hence form metal oxides plus hydrogen. So when metals react with water, you get metal oxides and hydrogen. However, some of the metal oxides are soluble in water. So the metal oxides now react with water to give you metal hydroxides. However, it is to be noted that all metals don't react with water. So here metals react with water to give metal oxides and hydrogen. The metal oxides, which are soluble in water, dissolve in water to give hydroxides, metal hydroxides. And we need to remember that all metals do not react with water. Now when sodium reacts with water, it will give you, like we said, sodium oxide plus hydrogen. But however, the sodium oxide will dissolve in water and now to give you sodium hydroxide. Sodium is in the solid form. Water is in the liquid. Sodium hydroxide is aqueous, dissolved in water, and the hydrogen, you know, is gaseous form. We need to balance this reaction. So to balance this reaction, we have 2 sodium hydroxide. So we have 2 and 2. Now there's an important product here, which is heat. A large amount of heat is given, and this heat sets hydrogen on fire. So this is a very explosive reaction. The hydrogen that is released is set on fire, begins to burn. And the same thing happens when potassium reacts with water. You get potassium oxide with hydrogen. But the potassium oxide now further reacts in water. It is soluble in water to give you potassium hydroxide. Potassium is solid. Water is a liquid. This is in aqueous form, dissolved in water because it's soluble in water, and this is gaseous. Here again, it's a highly exothermic reaction. A large amount of heat is given, and this heat burns the hydrogen. And to balance the reaction is same. You've got 2, 2 and 2. So here we see that metals like sodium and potassium, they react violently even in cold water. It may be even very ice cold water. The reaction is violent as a large amount of heat is given out, and this heat, because of this heat, the hydrogen catches fire. So we need to remember that the reaction of sodium with water is very violent. Next we get on calcium with water. Just like the other metals, calcium with water will give you calcium oxide plus hydrogen and heat here. However, this oxide, calcium oxide, is soluble in water, and it dissolves in water to give you calcium hydroxide. Calcium is in solid form. The water is liquid. Hydroxide soluble in water, so it's aqueous. And here we have not water, we have hydrogen, which we know is in gaseous form. However, here the hydrogen does not burn. And why does it not burn? Because the amount of heat given out is less. Let's go ahead and balance this reaction. You have to put 2H2O. So here there is no burning of hydrogen because the amount of heat given is less. So we see that the reaction of calcium is less violent. The heat evolved is not sufficient for hydrogen to catch fire. There's another important point we must know is here this hydrogen, when it reacts with the calcium, when it reacts with water, it gives out these hydrogen bubbles. These hydrogen bubbles stick on to the calcium, and eventually the calcium then begins to float. So the calcium starts floating because the bubbles of hydrogen gas formed stick to the surface of the metal. So calcium actually is a metal and it should sink in water. The density is higher, but when calcium is added to water, it begins to float because of these bubbles of hydrogen which surround the calcium, and the calcium then begins to float. Now magnesium 2 will react with water to give you magnesium oxide plus hydrogen, and the magnesium oxide being soluble in water will dissolve in water and give you magnesium hydroxide. Again you balance the reaction, you write the state, this is solid, liquid, this is aqueous, dissolve, and this is a gas. There's one point to remember here, that magnesium reacts only in hot water, not in cold water. Calcium, you need not have hot water, just any water. This clearly goes to say that calcium is more reactive than magnesium, because calcium reacts in any water while magnesium reacts in only hot water. And magnesium 2 gives out hydrogen and begins to float just like calcium. So magnesium 2 floats due to hydrogen gas sticking to the surface. Now let's get to aluminium. Aluminium 2 reacts with water to give you aluminium oxide plus hydrogen gas. Now this aluminium oxide is not soluble in water, so we do not get the hydroxide, we just get aluminium oxide. Another point to remember is aluminium does not react with just liquid water, it only reacts with steam. Hence when we are putting the physical states, we put solid here, we need to put gaseous here, and there is solid aluminium oxide, and this is gaseous, and then we go ahead and balance it, and on balancing you put 2 aluminium because there is 2 aluminium there, and 3 hydrogen, and here 3 oxygen. So it forms aluminium oxide. Iron 2 Fe reacts with water to give aluminium iron oxide Fe3O4 plus hydrogen. Here again the iron oxide is insoluble in water, hence it does not form iron oxide, does not form iron hydroxide. And the states, this is solid, here this is gaseous, solid and gaseous, and on balancing it is almost the same, you have 4 here and 4. Again this is steam, remember. So aluminium react with steam. So the application question for this, we have water boilers, and these water boilers could be made of 2 things. We could make them of steel or of copper. Now we can't make water boilers of steel because steel is made up of iron, is an alloy of iron, and we know that iron reacts with steam. So water boilers cannot be made of steel because steel contains iron. It's an alloy of iron plus carbon mixed, and we know iron reacts with steam. But when it comes to copper, copper does not react with steam. So water boilers are always made of copper and not of steel. So here's an application question. Water boilers are not made of steel, as steel is an alloy of iron and iron reacts with steam. Now there are three metals that do not react with water at all, and that is lead, copper, silver and gold. They do not react with water at all. So you need to remember this. These are four metals that do not react with water at all: lead, copper, silver and gold.